Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. How are you today?
A little bit bleary-eyed, as we say over here. It's been a full-on few days with not so much busy, but energetically dealing with one or two things. A bit of broadcasting, giving a talk and working with people's energies, and then there's been a couple of shows. So I've got up this morning, and I feel like I'm on catch-up. I don't know about you.
I feel a little bit like I'm on catch up too, and we still have our house guest Duke here. So Duke is doing very well. He's very happy, but he is right next to me on the other side of the room. So he may squeak a little bit. So it's bright and early for him. Raven is upstairs still enjoying the bed at the moment. But we had a lovely Easter. I had a run-in with a ham. And I wasn't sure. This is actually a funny story. So I'm a very good cook. I don't feel braggadocious saying that, but I'm a very good cook. My grandmother taught me how to cook, and so the ham, it's not a bone-in ham, but it was wrapped in plastic, and then it had the little string netting on it. And so I took off the plastic, I took off the string netting. And then there was like this other layer on it, but I didn't discover that until I cooked it. And it wasn't plastic. I don't know if it's some kind of casing. I don't know what it was. But after I cooked this ham, I was trying to pick it off. And then I talked to my mother, and my mother was like, no, you're supposed to leave that on there. So I was like, oh my God. So it was a cooking fail moment for me. But this week, you and I were going to discuss manifesting abundance. However, we decided to change the topic. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I don't know, did we decide whether there was a title on it? But we've had a couple of things affecting us, both short-term and long-term energetically around us. And we were talking, and we're tying it into the Easter theme of death and rebirth and kind of everything in between, because we all have different understandings. I mean, on one of our previous broadcasts, we talked about there's a lot of information and a lot of support out there for people who've literally lost something. And then we talked about the live grieving, as we called it, where you've lost sort of things. And it seems to be around me, with the work that I've been doing over these last 3 days, very, very prominent at the moment. I don't know whether it ties into retrograde or anything like that, because I've limited understanding of it. But I got a message from somebody saying, I just don't know what to do with myself, because there's solar flares going off, there's Mercury retrograde going off. And I'm sat there going, I don't get any of that sort of stuff. All I know is I'm just like, wow. And I keep having dreams about death and putting the past behind you, but symbolically. So we thought we'd air that out, because I think there's a lot of different varying energies, and we've had personal things that we're not going to actually expand upon, but we're going to generalize with it and see if anybody sort of vibes with what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, part of our discussion off camera, as empaths, as mediums, psychics, however you want to brand us today, dealing with transitions, like when people are transitioning, it's a little bit different for people like us, because we're tuned in a little bit differently to the energies that are happening, especially if you're there when the person is passing. I think a lot of parents do experience this when their children are born, or when they're if they're into animal husbandry, when animals are born. And that's one of the things that I was telling Rick off camera, is that for some reason, I don't know why, I have been flooded with all of these videos on all of my social media of animals being born. Horses, llamas. There was a really weird one the other day, and I was like, what is going on? Like, why do I keep seeing this? And then Rick told me that he keeps having dreams about death. So, there are no coincidences, but those are both transitions of a different sort. So how are you feeling about the death dreams that you're having?
Well, it's you as a tarot worker will know this more than I do, that when we get the death card, it does tend to promote, or especially with the people that I read for, quite a lot of fear. So I'm very quick to point out that anything to do with death is never literal death from my perspective. It's the ending of a process. And so when I describe the death cards, I always say, instead of now having a comma in the sentence where it means that you can keep going on and on and on with something and your tail could keep weaving all over the place, you've had a full stop put in there. So when you've had the full stop put at the end of the sentence, there is a gap now before the new starts. So when anything comes in regards to me, and we start to think about the potential powerful transformational aspects of the death card, we've still got to work up to what we actually want to happen. So a lot of what's been going on with me with these death cards is that there's certain things that are still hanging around, like stale energy. My personal opinion is that what's been sort of shown up in my personal life, I thought was actually done. But I always find that with spirit, in their infinite wisdom, that if there's even a crumb of something there that's sort of putting the pebble in the water and disturbing your energies, then you've got to go and look at it. So I was always told as well that by when I did my therapy training, make damn sure that you've got all of your crap put together and sorted out, because the first client that comes in with you that's along the same sort of frequency, that's experiencing the same sort of thing, it will really upskittle you, and it will work really, and you will be working then from your experience rather than from the spiritual perspective.
Right.
Throw in the empathy, which is then like the dial of sensitivity turned up to 10, and it's like, oh, you start to get a little bit wobbly with it all. So how I've dealt with it is to go, right, okay, like chunk it down. Basic forms of counseling, chunk something down so that you can actually cope with it. So we've spoke off camera there about being a little bit tired and a little bit jaded for one reason or another. So today would not be the day to go off on a major voyage of discovery and trying to unpack your psyche and deal with your child or do your shadow work, and because it's just non-productive, because we wouldn't have an energy to complete the task. So sometimes the answer to it is compassion, kindness towards yourself, because as empaths, that's what we want to give to other people, but we often forget to do it for ourselves. So what I took the message about being there's a needing for that death aspect around me, and then I will look deeper into it. Or maybe I won't look deeper into it. Maybe that's the message in itself, that I don't need to look too deeply into it, to flow with it, to allow these things to pass, and then we can move on and move forward. So yeah, death in its metaphorical sense doesn't scare me. It doesn't scare me at all. It's something to look forward to.
So I thought that was very interesting, because the death card, we don't have a lot of agency over the event, but we have agency over our perspective of the event, the ending or the beginning. Because it's really both. It's there's really something else that we're headed into. And I really like the Tolkien version where everybody's getting on the ship and they're going off with the elves, and they're going to live forever. I really like that kind of imagery and that kind of idea. But for regular us mere mortals, some people really do struggle with change, and I mean, some people even struggle with like rearranging the furniture. Like, that's too much change for people. You have to understand that the cycles of life, spring into summer, into fall, into winter, into spring again, you're going to have those changes, and we may be sad to see the flowers go, but we may be getting snow, we may be getting beautiful falling leaves, we may be getting beautiful bonfires. there's always something else to look, and it's your perspective on those inevitabilities that are going to happen to us. I really believe that all of the people in my circle right now, I've had experiences with before. I will have experiences with them again. I had a dog that I was certain he was a horse in a past life, and he had very horse-like attributes, which was very strange. But I really believe that we're going to have those things coming around again. Now, one of the things, with you and I is that we've had loved ones come to us. We have some evidence of that. But take it with a grain of salt, those of you that don't have that kind of evidence, but we have that strange evidence that kind of gave us the okay to. And I don't know if when your grandfather came to, you had kind of a sense of relief. I know you were shocked. You were in the garage and when you were like, oh, you're here. But with my grandfather, it was like, oh, okay. You're still hanging around. You're still looking out, for me. When you did the reading for me, I think it's hilarious that my other grandfather and my other grandmother, not the married couple, showed up. They were talking really loud to you. Because they both really talked loud. My grandmother was hard of hearing, and my grandfather on that side was a big, loud Russian guy. I just think, there's evidence that they're still there, that they still come to us. And sometimes it's just they're kind of hanging around us, just kind of patting us on the shoulder. And, again, mere mortals may not feel that, they may not recognize it. They may need a conduit or a translator like Ricker Idit to point that out to them. But it does happen. I've done a reading, I guess about 2 years ago, and it turned out I didn't know the gal was the wife of somebody I went to school with. And I was unaware that they had lost a child in childbirth. And as I was reading for this young lady, I'm going to call her young lady, I kept seeing a teenager behind her, beautiful teenage girl. And I was like, who's this teenage girl? And it was the child they lost. And I was mortified because, I typically don't like to, bring up that kind of stuff. And she was in teenage form, what I was seeing. So, I offered her as much comfort as I could, but I didn't want to bring up something that had happened, 18 years, 20 years earlier. So, those kinds of things, it's, you want to give people that evidence of transition and continuity, but sometimes, it's a little tricky to give that information. But, so, what is your take when you have clients that are struggling with that death, change, rebirth, transition?
Well, you know what I'm like, and anybody that's watched any of the stuff that I've done and that we've done together, that I'm a storyteller. This is my way, and I weave a little story. And the story pretty much doesn't change with this one. Like when people come to me, I'm blunt, I'm brash, I'm direct, but I'm also sensitive to people's needs when it comes to grieving. So grieving for me is my only Achilles heel when I'm actually trying to find the right words to actually express what I'm saying, but then I need to put a filter on it, which is something I'm not very good at. I tend to be heart on the sleeve type of guy and just let that come out. But I talk about grieving. Everything, whether we subscribe to this theory or not, is energy. And what I think tends to happen is grief for me personally is like a gut punch. It takes all of the wind out of you. It takes everything that you know to be like stable out of you. When you've lost somebody that you love, or even in the case of somebody that you don't love, but they've gone out of the energy, you've got to put your energy somewhere else. So when you're in that moment of absolute pain and you're distraught and all of the loss that you've got, it really sort of brings up this emotion. And for me, it goes like that. And that is what you can see. straight in your face. You can't see round it. You can't see underneath it. You can't see through it. It becomes all encompassing, and it's like takes it all out of you. So what I say to people is, I am not giving you advice because your grieving journey is so intensely personal for somebody else to try and structure your way out of it. I think it's a little bit irresponsible. So what I say is, I will support you and do whatever you want to do. So I look at that, moving that energy and imagining putting that to that side, because I've heard some really bad stories about people going, oh, 10 years, oh, you should be further on than this with it. You should be over that. You should be way past that. And I'm going, right, if that was me and I was stood there with you and I heard that delivery, I would use some very choice language about telling that person which direction they could head in and at what speed. So
Yeah.
get them to say, right, I just want you to stop just for a second, right? Because everybody's got that story. Everybody's got that way that they respond, right? And just get that energy and just move it there. All right. And you put it in your peripheral vision, because this for me is truth time, that grieving will never stop, right? It will never stop. So working with grief is like a constant maintenance. Some days it will be reasonable that you can get through the day without like even reflecting on it. Some days. Other days we've got the entirely different side of the coin where it is devastating and you can't seem to pick yourself up no matter what you do. But the truth of the matter is the person that has passed has gone. And it's what we've left behind that we've got to deal with. Now, every single client that I've ever mentioned or worked with grieving with, I know as soon as I connect in with their individual energy and the person that's missed them, somebody's having a shout at you.
Yeah, I'm actually going to mute myself and I'm going to let you take over for a minute. So I'm going to get him out real quick. I'm sorry.
Oh, bless him. No, don't apologize. Yeah. So when we're dealing with that grief cycle, it's, as I was saying, it's all encompassing. So if we put that energy to that one side, we can actually see what's going on in our current life. And I know for a fact, I feel this from the bottom of my heart, that if our loved ones that have departed saw us in any place where we was putting our life on hold because they've gone, we'd be in trouble, because the effort that it takes for them to actually come down into our back to see us all is quite intense. And what they want for us, if they were our loved ones down here, you can be damn sure that they'll be our loved ones up here, up in the spirit world, wherever it is that they actually end up at. So grieving is its own intense personal journey. And what I say to people is, I'm a structurer, a strategist. I like to put thoughts in place. I like to plant seeds. And one of my things is about timelines. And this is one of the only occasions that I would say about my timeline with grieving, that I have this hope that at some time in the future, the grief that I've experienced over the last 5 or 6 years will not be as intense. And that is my only thought on it. I've not set any long-term goals with it. I've not set any boundaries or anything like that. I have just said that at some undefined point in the future, I hope that I'm in a place where that it's not as painful. I don't know that to be true. I really don't, but that is my hope. So I always say to people, on the days that you're reasonably okay with it, then that's the day that you can be productive. And when I say okay with it, I mean just on an even keel. Not talking about anything fabulous or mind-bending or anything like that. You're on an even keel. So in my case, my father-in-law was my absolute hero, my absolute idol, and I miss him like I couldn't put into words. But we did have some rather daft experiences. We had some funny stuff because he was a very blunt and direct man, very strong man, ex-prison officer like myself. And his personality slowly eroded away over the years with MS and dementia. And to see him go from the strong man that he was down to what he became, where he was in 24-hour care and being fed through a bag and all of the other things that go with that. I tend to tune that bit out But I remember all of the times where we've gone to places and we've done daft things and had daft conversations and sat and belly laughed and things like that. And that's great, right? That is absolutely brilliant to recall all of this. And it's a go-to thing that the subconscious will store all of these memories for you to look at whenever you like. The difficult bit is when you get up in a real low mood and you just want that person there. So the battle that you're in is that the conscious mind will think up about the person, literally. What the conscious mind wants is that last 5 minutes to put something right, to say those last words, to have a last hug, because death, unfortunately, is an inevitability of life. So what we do is that we look at that and we understand that, we get that sort of concept in the thinking mind, but we still want that extra few minutes. So when I get up in that flat spot and I'm starting to think that, I know that they're literally not coming back, but that doesn't help. So I sit with the feeling. It's not maudlin, it's not being depressive or anything like that, but it's allowing yourself, giving yourself that permission to be sad, but not to get sort of drawn down into it long term. Because it's like with everything, and this is the subject that we were talking about off camera. I'm probably not the most sensitive person because I'm a little bit too blunt and direct, but my words often get ahead of my actual emotions. So sometimes when we're talking something like this emotive, you will be like, oh, he's not very feeling. Well, I can assure you I am. It's just I don't always choose my words in the correct manner. But I look at my grieving journey as that I'm not going to be in a place where I'm down for too long. Because whether you're grieving, whether you're angry, whether you're whatever it is, that emotion, your life is still going on. So this is why I'm talking about moving the emotions to one side so that you can pick the pathway that you want. Because your loved ones in the spirit world, I'm 100% convinced about this, want the best for you. They want you to be able to move forward. They want you to be able to have the best life that you can. And this is where I'm 100% convinced that they will always be with you. You know, there's people there that go, oh, I'm doubting my spiritual connection now because I'm going through this grieving stage, right? That is where spirit have got their own sort of decorum, I think, for want of a better word, that they will step back and allow you to do whatever you need to do. So please, 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 if you take nothing else from my little talk here now, Annabelle's back, that spirit will always support you come what may, right? They're non-coercive, they're non-judgmental, so they're not going to push. They're like the politest guests in the world. So your spiritual family, when you're looking for somebody, put out the shout for them. Ask them to show you something that only you could know. I mean, Annabelle was saying there about whether you sort of need a conduit like us to bring you those messages. Ultimately, without wanting to do myself out of business, no, you don't need us. If you sit in that quiet space, what I was saying there, where you get up in that day and you need that connection, sit in that quiet space and ask your guides, your inspirers, your loved ones to take that step forward, and they will bring you that evidence that you need. But it's drowning out what I call the monkey chatter, the busyness in your head, to see between the gaps. So my version of meditation is sitting in my own power and putting out the request forms, and spirit will always match that. They will always bring that back into you. So never be in a state of fear with, like, did your loved ones go before the time or anything like that? No, I don't believe anybody does. I think that is part of the blueprint of life that we write before we even get to the spirit, before we even get to this earth plane. And then we live our life with a few tweaks and adjustments to that blueprint. So this is all about learning lessons. And I'm new to this concept of about opposites, because I believe that there are opposites to everything. You know, you do one, you get experience the other. So probably in the past life, you might have been a difficult person. When you go to experience this one, you're a nice person, and vice versa. So it's all about learning your lessons finding your coping strategies, and then being into that space where you're ready for that rebirth. Right. So there's a neat segue for you, Annabelle. Now you're back.
Here, you want to meet my big friend Duke?
Oh, that's it. Sorry, guys, you're gonna get nothing out of me now. I just love dogs. That's me gone.
Here he is. Hey, oh.
So,
oh my God, he's massive. He's a massive dog.
I saw the picture. He's huge, isn't he? But I'm sat in this room because I've got 3 of them, and you might hear every now and again them barking because the older one has this habit of barking at a fly 3 streets away.
So he's got a big booming bark. He's got a really amazing bark, but he's the product of my sister-in-law losing her dog, and her dog Rocco, and he reminds us a lot of our Bruno that we lost, so it's pretty wild. But so I apologize everybody for having that little brief break. But Sylvia's daughter had a question. It might be kind of a non sequitur, but she had a question. So I don't know. And I got a huge splinter in my finger just running outside. So she says she usually gets 3 to 4 pieces of evidence with her mediumship ability. How can she get more information? So I can answer that real quick. Basically, what I tell, and this is from Lori Williams from, she's intuitive specialist. That's where I studied controlled remote viewing. Describe, don't try to identify. So this weekend, I for the first time tried to. We have a whole bunch of lotteries that are really, really high right now in the United States. And one was just 1 billion, and somebody won that about a half hour away from us. Lay down, buddy. And there's one that's I think 988 million right now. So one of the things that they tell you is instead of trying to get numbers, associate the numbers with a color. And then get the colors when you do your meditation. And then those are your numbers that you're working with. It works out a little bit easier with your intuition because you're describing the color versus trying to identify the number. It's a different way of trying that. So I always tell my student, Sylvia's daughter, to describe as much as possible. So that means, if it feels cold, you can describe the cold. If it feels, tight, if you're, in a confined space. So I would try doing that. Try describing versus identifying. So that may bring some more information in, and write everything down. As you're doing your readings, just keep writing everything down, because you may get a piece of information that doesn't seem like it's very valuable or it doesn't mean anything, and then when you look at the whole picture, you may have some really good information there. So I would try that. So what about you, Rick?
So I'm looking at that, and I'm splitting the actual verbal that's written down there on there. So Sylvia's daughter, this is my perspective. Please do not take this as a personal opinion or that I'm just reading the words that you've got there. Right. In regards to mediumship abilities, it is subjective. Right, it is actually getting in tune, and the first thing that I would say about any mediumship stance is knowing you and knowing how you work, how you receive. So everything comes in through the third eye. So you see, you sense, you feel, you touch, you taste, all of the clairs that we've spoken about on an earlier broadcast. Now, where I usually get 3 to 4 pieces of evidence. Oof, you're lucky. Right, you're lucky if you've got 3 to 4 pieces of evidence, and you've got the boldness to say that you've not wrong. Congratulations! I admire your spirit. Personally, I look at it and I tell people I am not a teacher, so I haven't got the experience that Anna's got. All I can say is that I've been a professional on the circuits for coming up 7 years, and what I tend to find is. And this is the thing that I would say that I would give you this piece of advice from that perspective, is that if you're getting that much information and you're that correct, you're doing bloody well. You are doing amazingly well. But your clients will always keep you in line anyway, right? Your clients pick you, right? You put out your energy, your clients pick you. And I can give you a prime example of what I'm talking about to be true. I do these little card readings in an envelope. I do them blind. So I sit with the energy of a tarot card and I start to automatic write. Whatever's coming through for that card, you've got a structure around it. So pentacles are money and finances. If you've got your cups, it's emotions. And I'll start to write. I allow the spiritual connection coming in. So if there's a spiritual connection, I'll write all of that down. Write the message, whatever's coming in through spiritually, stick the card to the front of the piece of card that I've read on, stick it in an envelope and sell it. It's a short reading. Yesterday, because I wasn't very busy, I sold one of these readings to one of the catering staff that was at the event that I was at. And at the end of the event, I was taken outside by one of the organisers and said that those readings that you do are far too cheap. And I went, okay. I said, I do them because they're like an attention getter for people, that everybody can afford that thing because it's a token. It's a takeaway. It's already there. It's like your supermarket thing where you take something away last minute at the till. She said, yes, but the thing is, it's put her off having a reading that's the full reading. And I said, what? In what way? She said, because everything was contained within that envelope. Right? She said that everything that she needed answered all of the questions. Now, I couldn't possibly know that. And like she said, he couldn't possibly know, but he's delivered that. And this is what it's like when your clients come to you. It's all right, you sitting there going, I've got this right, that right, and that right. They might have come for one piece of information. It could be one word that you sit there in that half an hour segment that you have with them, or that hour segment that you have with them. They're not even taking that on board because they want to have that one piece of information. So my answer to all of that is great that you're not getting it wrong, but that's from your perspective. So I would say keep going and work on your own individual connection. You are who you are, and spirit, because the non-coercive and non-judgmental, will work at you at the speed that you want to develop anyway. Don't aim for perfection. Don't aim for being the best medium out there, because that's where we can. I'm not saying you are, please don't take this personally, but that's where we can tiptoe into that ego side of things where we've got to be proven right. Always remember, from my perspective, when you're working with any clients whatsoever, who we are, as lovely as we all look today, it is not important, right? We are a conduit. We are that mouthpiece, that microphone for that other person's energy. Once you start going down the route of, darling, look at me, you get a little bit lost and your energy will dull that way anyway. And spirit, even though they're not judgmental, I always think about, I joined the army when I was 16. That was the only ambition I ever had about my work life. I wasn't cut out to do it, but that's another story. But when I did my training for it to actually get in, we had to do certain exercises and things like that. And when it came to the bit where we were told that we'd passed, I had this drill sergeant in my head. And what he said that day was, always remember what Sergeant Major gives, Sergeant Major takes away. So when it's come to working in my spiritual life, that's exactly the thing that I've come up with as well. Spirit will open many, many doors. For every £10 that you invest, you're going to get $100 back. But always remember, if we get into that ego state, what you're given can also be taken away. And what I mean by that, they're not suddenly going to start punishing you because you become confident or you work through your self-esteem issues. But I feel, and I've seen this a lot when I'm sat back watching people who started out for the right reasons and now have become a money magnet, then the quality of what they're delivering starts to wane, because what they're doing is they're going from their own knowledge, from their own thing. And this is not what mediumship connection's about. It is about being a conduit for that outside source, right? Because the only filter that you need to do with mediumship, and this is my belief, again, I can't prove this, this is just my experience, that all information, when it comes through from the spirit world, comes down the funnel through the crown chakra. Now, when it gets there, we deliver it, and the only filter that it needs is our higher self, right? The energy that is just pure love, pure source energy, will decide that us down at this earthbound level, are the version of us that lives this everyday 3D life, what state of mind you're in. How can you deliver it? How can you best deliver it? So it filters it down in a way that you can understand. And I think of the program over here, it's called Catchphrase, and its catchphrase is say what you see. So when I'm delivering, it comes into my head. So like yesterday, the reading that I did for this particular lady, I gave her one piece of information that she went, no, I can't get it. Well, I can't keep pushing the envelope because she didn't understand it. So I then put it back to spirit and say she doesn't understand that. So we parked him, because if he's made the journey, always remember this, spirit are not wrong. You can be, because you are the conduit that's delivering that information from outside, but your client's not wrong either. So that client was saying to me she couldn't recognize, but I knew that he was there, so I parked him. Right? It might have been a guide. It might have been somebody that thought a lot of her, but she didn't realize it. But as soon as then I brought in the person that she actually needed, she was bang on with that. And then also brought in another piece of information there that could only have been picked up from spirit. And she went, oh my God, yes, how did you know that? And this is my answer. When people say to me, you're brilliant, how did you know that? My answer is always the same. I don't know nothing, right? I don't know nothing. It's not about me. It's about the client that sat in front of me. Yes, I want the best for them, but I'm telling you now, truthfully, I am not going to sit and make up a story to fit them. So we were talking about death and rebirth there. I would love to say to everybody that I sit with, oh, yes, they passed peacefully and all of this sort of thing. But I brought through the news yesterday and I had to sort of test how I was going to walk on it, because it could have been like cracking ice. If I'd have got this wrong with the way that I deliver, I could have been sunk, and I could have really lost that client's trust, because it's about building trust. It's about building rapport. It's about building empathy with people, as well as your evidential thing. So I said to her, I'm going to give you a piece of news here that you might not like. I said, but I am a truth teller. I says, I don't embellish it, and I don't know. I says, your grandmother, when she went to the spirit world, was frightened. I says, and there's a people down here that are still worrying now whether she went peacefully or not. She did, but it took a lot to get her to go, because she didn't want to go and she was frightened of the other side. But the good news is that she had two people that came and collected her alongside a dog that was sat there with her, and she went. She went reluctantly. Please know this. She went reluctantly. She fought, but she realised that it was her time to come. Mum then popped in, who was actually sort of stood in the background, and went, he's entirely correct. Now, the weirdest thing about that was that I'd also sensed that this lady, the young lady that I was reading for, had also got this untapped potential with the spirit world. And while she was sat in this room somewhere, when they passed, she went out of body and helped her gran to the helpers that took her to the spirit world. And I'm sat there with all of this information, right? And I'm telling you this from the bottom of my heart. I didn't have a clue what I was saying, but it was very, very clear, and the warmth and the pure love from the spiritual world that I was passing this information. Whether I cared whether I was right or wrong or not, just did not come into it in any way, shape or form. But to watch the response from that lady as she realised that what she'd been feeling was entirely correct, that Grandma didn't pass peacefully. She was frightened, but she was at peace now. Now, I could have sat there for another hour with her talking about what's going on in her life, what she's experiencing, and it wouldn't have mattered. It was like filler. What she needed was that bit about her family and connecting in with energy. So I wouldn't get too tied up about whether you're right or wrong or not. Just enjoy the experience. Yeah, that's a lovely. It's yeah. what a well, beautiful comment there, Prima, and you know, my heart goes out to you, because I believe in those peaceful moments, even when they're under the influence of the morphine and the painkillers and all of that sort of stuff. That's where they're at the purest, and I feel it gives them the opportunity to step in and out. So when my father-in-law passed, for about maybe 6 weeks beforehand, we were being told that he was going in and out of body. So we was at home, he was in the home, and yet he was with us, because we got this distinct smell that could only be coming from him. So he was like tidying his affairs up before he went. And now that he's been past nearly 3 years, you get echoes of voices and memory links and things like that to just sort of draw you back into that sort of emotion. But that smell, that distinctive knowing that is there, is now no longer the case. It's gone into the memory. So yeah, I agree. Anyway, you're back. You talk.
So I think and Prima, my condolences to you as well. I think that morphine period, when we have individuals that are on hospice, is very interesting. And here in the United States, I think it's a combination of morphine and Ativan. And a lot of people are under the impression that they just keep giving the morphine until the person passes. They just essentially kind of do a slow OD. But it's really not. It just helps the body relax so that they're not tensed up. And that period of morphine protocol, the morphine protocol, is very interesting for the spirit, because that's exactly how I feel, Rick. I feel like they kind of float in and they float out. It's almost like they're testing leaving their body with that morphine protocol. And I think that that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know how much astral projection you've done. I think it's really fun. I like to astrally project. I like to do meditations where I jump out of my body for a little while. You swim around, in the whatever. And to be sure, the distinction between astral projection and remote viewing. Astral projection, we actually leave our body and we go to another location. Remote viewing is more like we're looking through a telescope, so we're not like actually in the situation. But I think that the conversations that we can have psychically during that morphine protocol, very interesting. I think, we do get a lot of raw emotion. I think in some cases, I don't know if you've ever read the Stephen King book, Carrie. At the end, when Carrie's dying at the end, Stephen King has a very interesting manner in doing inner monologue. He does it in parentheses. So you'll hear the inner monologue of the person, maybe disjointed, very, very thoughtful thoughts and thoughtful communications in there. So, I think that is the kind of conversations that we have when someone's passing away. The interaction that Sue Snell has with Carrie White at the end of that book, they're conversing in parentheses, but it's not complete sentences. It's not whole thoughts. It's kind of more emotion with some language in there. And I think that that's really, what we're doing in that that morphine protocol period. So we have some good insight and questions here. So embracing aging. Understanding why my loved ones wouldn't come to me directly, but someone, may have been you, Rick, the antenna wasn't pointing in the right direction. I think that too. It's my grandmother shows up every now and then at my kitchen while I'm cooking. She puts her hand on the sink. I can see her hand on the sink. She's judging me. She taught me how to cook. She's judging me. But does she come around all the time? No, not necessarily. I've had a few people that have passed on that, I was fond of and respected. And I asked them, hey, would you be a spirit guide for me. And I keep getting no's, like no one wants to be my spirit guide, which is fine. I already have some, but I always put more on the team. But I think sometimes it's not that our antenna isn't pointing in the right direction. Sometimes it is, but sometimes they don't want to perpetuate that. Example, if you've had a very hard loss, maybe they don't want to create an extended dance remix where you're kind of pining away. Maybe they want you to move on with your life. Did you have the show The Ghost of Mrs. Muir?
No, not that I
Oh,
remember.
gosh, it was so good. It was a movie and it was also a TV series. And I watched the TV series when I was little. I think it was in the 60s. And I watched it on the remake, on the replay. But it was a mother of two children, and she moves into a home that's haunted by a sea captain, and he's dashing and very gruff and a little ridiculous. He had a monkey tree outside the house that was endangering the house in one episode, and she has to have it cut down because it's gonna fall in the house. And he's like, "Oh, I brought that monkey tree from Manchuria or something." But he actually has a relationship with her. He's a ghost, but he's having a relationship with her and the children. And it's very cute and it's very charming. And oh my God, this guy just turned himself into a little package.
No, beautiful.
He's like, I'm going to pretend I'm a little dog. But, as much as we would like for our passed on ones to have like a direct conduit with them, to have, conversations, even for experienced mediums like Rick and it just doesn't work that way. I just saw something very interesting. I was doing some research on mediumship. We're always learning over here. And one of the things that this teacher said is that the spirits are lowering their vibration to come down to our level, to get closer to us, and we're coming up to their level. So, we're not going to have a conversation like Rick and I are having right now. Like we're not going to be able to go back and forth and, well, what do you think I should do about this? And where is the last will that you wrote? And is there $1 million buried in the backyard? Like, you're just not going to get that kind of conversation. You're going to get little bits of information that are vital and supportive of you at this point in your life. So, so I think that is interesting. I mean, I've told the story before. This is a memorial tattoo for a friend of mine, a guy named Danny. He passed away in a car accident while I was on the phone with him. It was awful. And I had asked psychics for years why he hadn't come to me, why he hadn't shown up. And they never really had a good answer until it was maybe 6 years ago. I went to a big event with the Jersey Shore psychic, not the Long Island medium. It was a big room, and she just kind of walks around the room and she hit on me. And she told me a lot of stuff that was very interesting. And I was so taken aback, and it was so unexpected. I just cried through the whole reading. It was very, very powerful. But she said, he's the wind. So whenever the wind blows, I know it's him, giving me a message. So, we have another question up here that I want to pull up. So how do I deal with the pain I feel when someone is about to pass or suffering? I can feel it when someone's having a stroke. Okay. So, this is something that I just was talking with a friend of mine about. When my mother-in-law, we lost her in July, the end of July, to cancer. And at one point she had been taken to, in the previous 9 months, she'd been taken to the hospital as an emergency. And so we all raced there. And when we got there, I walked into the cancer ward and boom, got hit with everybody's emotions in that whole hospital. And Greg looks at me and he goes, "Oh, you didn't shield yourself, did you?" And I was like, "No." So I had to take a few minutes. It's like, I can liken it to going into an extreme weather. So if you go out in the cold with short sleeves, go out in the snow and it's, snowing or raining, and you go out in short sleeves and a short pants and flip flops. Even if you get dressed out there, it's going to take you a little bit longer to acclimate and to warm back up. So it just takes a little bit longer. Given being in that situation again, because that was what I was experiencing, a lot of the grief and a lot of the push and pull of being on a ward that had people that were terminal. What I would have done had we not been in an emergency and running into the building, I would have just taken a little bit of time to breathe a bit. And when I do my prep for any psychic work, I bring white light down from the universal light into my head. And then I blow it out and I have like a big bubble around me. What I would do in that kind of a situation is I would blow that bubble out and make it a little bit more substantial than just that white light. I would, imagine like maybe like a concrete steel ring, something around me, just to kind of protect me from the input. Make it permeable so you can do output, but make sure that you have the less input coming in. That does help. Taking a few minutes to ground yourself, standing outside of a building or outside a certain situation and seeing the roots grow out of your heel bones into the earth and watch them spread, that can help as well. If this is, Yuki, if this is something that's chronic for you, that you're always like, you go to the grocery store and you're picking up on people, I would do a little bit of shielding, like a light shielding every morning before you go out or before you go into different situations, because you can kind of leave that antenna up. And, if you do that, you're just kind of receiving everything. It's like leaving your radio on all day long and spinning the dial. You don't know what you're going to get. And, like I said, like you can walk into the grocery store and you can have somebody who just murdered, I said the M word, committed some kind of an awful thing, or somebody who's cheating on somebody, or kids that are stealing stuff. Like you're going to pick up on all that. And, you really need to select when you're going to flex those gifts. Having more control over not using it is a really good practice for getting better at using your sensitivity to people around you. What do you think about that, Rick?
I agree. I mean, I'm not, when I listen to that way of describing it, that's where your teacher comes out. And this is where I come to sort of opposite side of things, because a lot of what I experienced, I have not got the experience of. So I often have to find things on the fly, because what I've found is over these last few years, my sensitivities have amped up. So like I do with anything to do with my spiritual work, I ask for guidance. My first protocol is always my higher self, the spiritual beings, or anything like that. And then if there's any training that I've experienced of how I'm going to deal with it, is there anything that I've experienced that's similar? So what I do is I've had the same opening up and closing down procedure ever since I've started in this business. It's not the right term, but in this business. And I'm sat here as a hypocrite this morning, because for the last 3 days, I've had my radio antenna all over the place. And I am at that point where I need to have a good few minutes where I sit down and close down. And I always work in gratitude. I always work in truth, love, light, and upliftment. And I always ask that any energy that goes out of my system or out of my awareness, that it be guided, guarded, and protected. So when it comes down to the close down that I haven't done, so do as I say rather than not as I do in the 10. So when I have the close down, I ask for my chakra system to be closed down individually. So I work through the chakra system from the crown down to the root. Anything that's gone out using Kundalini energy, which I have very, very little understanding of, I ask that as that energy has been brought back in, because I do feel that Kundalini energy is out of my control. So I work with it, but it's not something I can steer anywhere. So as it comes back in, I ask that it comes back in clean. right? That it's cleaned, or I think it's transmuted, I think is the word. And any of the staler energies that come in around it to be put into Mother Earth, and Mother Earth takes care of that, cleans it all up and sends it back out into the cycle. Close down these chakra systems, but not fully. Ask them to close back down to their normal working speed, which allows me to deal with whatever I have to deal with. Because even when I'm not working, there's a level of sensitivity that you need to display, because if you're totally closed off, you're unfeeling. And I don't want that, because that's just not me. So we'll bring them all down. The Kundalini energy or any of the outside energy resides for me in the root chakra. So I ask that the root chakra is closed down. It's guided, guarded and protected. Then I visualize like bubble wrap around me, which I don't know if you're anything like me, but the thing of popping bubble wrap is brilliant. So it takes me a while to get this visualization of having bubble wrap around me without wanting to pop it, but bring that in so that I'm safe, right? And if I fall, if I get something wrong, then I'm going to bounce a little bit. The final closing off point for me is I visualize being stood in a cone of mirrors. Now, the important thing is that the mirrors are facing outwards, right? So getting that. So what happens is, and this is a belief system, it's not true fact or anything that I can prove, is that energy, when it comes in, the universe can only send back to you what you reflect out. So if there's anything that's coming in from the outside source, because I only work in truth, love and light, that's what I'm vibrating at. That's what will come back into my mirrors. So I'm protected from anything there. So imagine that something dark or something that I don't want comes in, it will hit my mirror and be bounced back out, because that's not what I deal with. And that's my visualization technique. I slow my breathing down. I will ask to change state of behavior. So when I'm finished, I always in a place of gratitude, but I always tell my truth as well. So like this weekend has not been the most productive. However, I'm in gratitude for being in the place of actually being able to do what I've done this weekend. And I felt very, very lucky for it. But it's like with anything, and this is the thing I would start to get into your head and really get this in there. We spoke before, didn't we, about imagination and knowing. So splitting the difference between imagination and knowing. So when I'm working now and I'm back to my everyday earthy work, well, I don't really work anymore, but my earthy sort of stuff around here, I still want to have my feet on the ground. But we're still doing a job. I have done this readings this weekend. I did a 3-hour demonstration for people online and doing readings. I was tireder after that than I've been doing a 12-hour job on a building site. This is where you need to start taking yourself seriously, right? That you are doing a high, it's not pressure, but you are doing a high intensity job. So you wouldn't expect to go out onto a building site and do heavy labouring without having built up a tolerance to it and being able to manage it. So this is the same with your spiritual work. Get into that place of saying to spirit, right, this is about as much as I can cope with today. Please help me with it. Take that away from me. So even when I'm doing readings, I have a tendency to feel conditions that people have passed with. So they'll put cancer on me. They will put, all of this sort of chest type of ailments, heart conditions, and they'll put that on me. But sometimes it's too intense. In the eagerness of the spirit world to pass through the information, they have to realize as well that I'm just an everyday geezer down here on this earth plane that doesn't have access to all of the records that they've got. So they need to work with my energy as well. So it's kind of like a spiritual fitness regime with it, that when it gets too much for you, learn to say the word no. Please take that back. Please dial it off. Please put that in another way. Or even better, if you're not working, I'm not working. Take that away. I will, it's the field of dreams thing, that if you book them, they'll come. And if they come without an invite, don't let them in. That's just my way of processing it, because I haven't got the knowledge that you've got, Anna. Right? I kind of get a lot of my answers by feel as I walk along, and it's experience. I'm kind of one of these people that gets thrown into something, and then you learn to swim, because you were speaking about astral traveling there, right? I know it's happening, but God knows how. I've never controlled it. remote viewing. I go out of body places. And I don't know if anybody else has ever experienced this, but all of a sudden you wake up like you've been thrown from the top of a building. But the landing is you land back in your bed, which is all comfortable. And then you come into your conscious awareness and it's like, what the hell just happened? And yet, so I woke up one morning just recently and I could have sworn I'd got mud on my feet because I'd had no shoes wherever I'd been. And it's just that strange, but it's getting past the conscious thinking mind and starting to work with the spiritual. What it ultimately comes down to, whatever you're experiencing, you can have a choice of whether you want to do it or not. If you don't want to do it, that's also fine. Spirit have offered you the opportunity to experience something that not everybody else will experience, but you don't have to take up on the information. So it's about protecting yourself predominantly and deciding whether you want to go on this track or not. You don't have to experience this journey unless you want to.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've told my students too is set hours for being psychic. Like you can be psychic 1 hour a day. You can be an empath 1 hour a day. You can dial it back the rest of the time. To add a wrinkle to that, you can be 100% psychic while you're doing your meditative work, while you're doing your prep work. Maybe in the morning you want to do that. And then, as you go about your regular day, you want to be at like a level 2. So, you'll still get, notification if there's like a shady McShadester near you, but you're not going to be tuned in to the lady at the grocery store who's pissed off at her mother-in-law, like you're just not going to have that. That I think the variations of being tuned in come with practice and come with experience. But I've referenced her before. I worked with a young gal who is a medium, and when you're going through hormonal changes, your first menses, like for women, childbirth, menopause, because of the craziness of the hormones in your body and what's going on with you, because you're transitioning to a different type of this incarnation. Sometimes that will kick up a lot of emotions, a lot of psychic awareness, a lot of things like that. And this poor girl, she was in the middle of having children, and so she had babies that were up in the middle of the night, and she had spirits coming to her. She would get into bed and she would, go, oh, thank God I could go to sleep. I ran around with kids all day. And I've got 2 hours before the baby wakes up for feeding, and she would have spirits coming to her. So I said, set hours, like write it on your calendar. You are not psychic between 12 midnight and 3 a.m. If that's when you're supposed to sleep, that's, tell them I'm off limits. You can actually put up a sign that says, the psychic is out, the psychic is in. Setting hours for yourself is very valuable. And I actually did that when I was working my corporate job, because I did not want to have free form information coming in when I was talking to my insurance clients. I didn't want to pick up on, Bob Smith's issues with his wife. Like, I just didn't want to pick up on that. So I would shut that off. I did use some controlled remote viewing to do like market research, but I just didn't want because I deal with so many people with their personal issues at this job. When I'm working, you have a tendency to kind of slip into that when you're talking to other people. So I would set the hours like, from 8:30 to, 5:30. I was not going to be psychic in my day job unless I carved out time for a little remote view to do market research. It just wasn't worth it. And you will be exhausted. I can easily do like a 3-hour live and, feel pretty good at the end of it all. But there are some times that, you're just giving so much, you're getting so much information that you're just utterly exhausted. When we did the Psychic News Universe the other day, I was exhausted after that. I was absolutely exhausted when we were done. I've, of course, babysitting this big handsome fella here, then, switching around with him and Raven, trying to make sure Raven gets enough attention. I was exhausted. I basically took the weekend to just do laundry and kind of reset. So, I don't, I kind of went far afield, but I start a couple of things here. So embracing aging, that's one of your followers, said when her dad was dying, he often used to reach out. So that when my mother-in-law was in her last days, I started following a lot of hospice nurses, and that was something that I saw that was universal. They said a lot of people will lift their hands up and they'll look beyond the people that are in the room. That gives me comfort that there are other people that are around. My mother-in-law had a dream about her mother, and she had told her mother, "I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet." So, I thought that was very interesting. And Greg dreamed about his mother after she had passed away, and she had asked him. She said, "I don't know what to do," and he said, "Well, you're just supposed to go on." And she said, "What's it like there?" And he said, "I don't know. You're gonna have to experience that yourself." So, Greg said, "Well, why would she come to me?" I go, "Because you're like an open channel right now, after having his experience with his friend that had passed away. He's kind of an open conduit. And he's a very good psychic, even though he is a man of science and he doesn't really, but he doesn't entirely believe, but he has a lot of evidence now. It's I think it's really vital to understand that sometimes there are helpers that will come and kind of usher our loved ones across the finish line, if you will. I think that there are people that are hesitant to leave, whether they have unfinished business, or they have very strong connections, or they're concerned about the people that they're leaving behind. Sometimes it is hard to leave. So, I'm curious. I'm a little bit of a control freak, so I'm wondering what's going to happen when I go. But this living room is my favorite place in the whole world, so I'm probably going to be here. So you can come visit me after I've passed away. But I think it's when they say that they're talking with people, they say that, and I think there was another comment here. I think it was Prima's comment. Yeah, Prima said that her late husband was having conversations with past relatives and then moved on to talking to a higher order. I think that is really good evidence that there's a bit more that's going on there. So than what we know in intellectually. So, and embracing agents said, so glad she tuned in today. She also feels other people's physical pain. So I feel that too. Rick, do you get that when you do your readings? Like if somebody has like a sore knee and you're like, oh, like what's going on with your knee?
Oh my word, honestly. Yes, all of the time. If you wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind just dealing with a comment that's come up there from Uki. Sorry, excuse my slip of the tongue. Is it pronounced Uki? Am I pronouncing that right?
I said Uki. I don't.
Yeah, I hope I've pronounced that right. Where she's put, it's creepy every time when she's connecting in. Right. So this is again where I feel that it's being boss and stepping in. So if and we are still in discussions about this, that I do ever start teaching, I just want to bring in my own little way of that. I've found a way of doing it. This is not me being taught. This is how I've sort of been in that sort of under fire moment and thought, how the hell am I going to work my way through this? So I imagined working with spirit. Right. When I first started with it, and you get that first buzz of connecting with something that's right, and you get all of this information and all of this lovely feeling that you've helped somebody connect, right? You've got spirit up in the air at this level, and you're looking up and you're, oh, thank you for feeding me and giving me all of this wonderful feeling. I'm so in awe of you and all of this sort of stuff. Right. This is where that when you start to realize that if you've got your head up that way all of the time, the biggest thing that you're going to get out of that is a crick in the neck. So we bring spirit down, because Anna was saying earlier on about them lowering their vibration and we raise ours so that somewhere we meet in the middle. If we've got spirit at a co-pilot level, because that's what we're doing, we're flying the plane with them, because without us as the earthbound conduit, that this information that they're bringing into us is going to go no further. So we bring down spirit to our earthbound that vibration, and then we can talk to them, and then we can communicate. So in regards to it being creepy, I will be turning around to be saying to my pilot here, right, let's avoid that. I'm not interested in working with that vibration. Now, how I got round that, one of my biggest guides, who I believe is either the gatekeeper or one of the, as we spoke about last week, is one of the my protectors. He's a wolf. Now, when I started working out with spirit, I had what I believe was a contract signing. That spirit came to me and said, we would like you to work with us or for us, or however it was worded. And I went, oh, and like you do with any contract, let me just have a look through the fine print. You just want to work with me and you're happy with me the way that I am. Right. Do you want to sign that contract? Yeah, because thousands and thousands of people, if not millions, are offered a contract, but don't always take it. And that's fine. However, before I put pen to paper, I said to them that, right, okay, I accept that you accept me as I am, but I don't quite feel comfortable with this. I'm not quite sure of what's going on. So let me say from my perspective, I'm not the brightest of people in the world. So if you bring me something through overcomplicated or get into Egyptian hieroglyphics or things like that, or innuendo, I'm not going to get it. It's going to go over my head. So I need you to help me work with in a simplified manner. If you're going to bring something through, make it sledgehammer subtle, like you're going to hit me in the face with it so that I can get it. I don't want this round about the houses type of thing. And I got back this nice feeling. Yeah, we'll do that. So signed it. So one of the things that was the clauses in mine was that I do not work with any darkness or negativity. If you're okay with that sub clause, then you put your signature to that. Right. So people now say to me, what happens when you get a dark spirit around you? Well, I don't know, because I don't. Because it's not in my contract. Because we've agreed in that contract. So what happens now is if I'm sat with a client that has attracted an energy that I believe in my heart that is not good for them, I stop the reading, because I hear the wolf walking round like a chain link fence. So that's a signal to me to draw the client's attention to the fact that I've got an energy that I believe shouldn't come any further. But, and this is where I want to be clear on this, I cannot say to that client, I'm not bringing them through. It has got to be on that client's behalf of whether I deliver that message or not, regardless of what I feel. And how it's happened is, I should say it's probably happened about a dozen times in this last 7 years, that it's happened in a comedy way where somebody's gone, I know who that is, and you can tell him to F off. I'm not having anything to do with him, which is easy then, because the wolf removes the energy. Or it's something that I'll hear them out and then they'll go, I want them moving on the way, in which regards the wolf moves the energy. Or the client trusts me enough to make that decision to say, send that energy on its way, because they'll have an idea who it is and what they're bringing in. So that's part of the contract signing. So any energy that comes round me is vetted. And that's in my mindset. Now, whether that's true or not, whether that's a proper procedure, that's what stands up. There's only one time and one time only, and I've had to sort of think on the fly with this. I went to do a house party at a place very close to me. And I picked up the chain link fence rattling. And I've got this really unpleasant feeling of a gentleman there, and I'm using it in its loosest possible terms, that was very demanding, very, I think, physically violent towards the lady that I was reading for. And I just felt like that. So looking up to my guides put me on notice. Spoke to the lady and said, I've got this very difficult, but she went, I know who it is straight away. You don't need to say any more. I said, well, it's in my opinion that his energy needs moving on. See what he's got to say. So I passed it on. She went, no, not interested. I went, right, that's fine. Gone. He refused to leave. Right. And this is the first time that I physically experienced this. So I've had no knowledge of how to deal with it. Like this on my hand. So trusting my guides and my spiritual team implicitly, I just said, take it away, remove it, like this. So I then said, as a spiritual being, go, leave, move towards the light, move out of the way, go wherever you need to go, because if you love this person as much as you are telling me that you do, despite my doubts, then you will respect her needs and her wishes, because if you don't, you're kind of proving her point anyway, aren't you? So go.
Yeah.
Still, this feeling of having my wrist being crushed. This is where I lost my composure then and went, right, F this, get away from my presence now, or you're going to be dealing with something entirely unpleasant. Now, off.
Yeah.
And the grip went. And it went. And then I know my guides have taken that away. But I didn't know how to handle the situation. So I just went with what I know, that I'm going to protect myself. So I always come back to this thought that, yes, we've got the spiritual practices, but don't forget who you are. Don't forget how strong you are, that ultimately, if it comes down to it, and you've got this creepy feeling around you, right, you wouldn't go and engage in a conversation on the street with a creepy person and let them follow you back to your house and invade your privacy and stop your sleep pattern. So don't do it down here on an, basically man your stations, put your guards up, put whatever it is that you need to do, but you're not the employee. You're part of the team. So it's getting to that step. And sometimes we have to do desperate things. And that desperate thing is like, all right, piss off. I'm not dealing with this. Just go. I'm not playing. You can say what you like. You can chuck me stuff around. You can do whatever. And I'm still alive. Right? I'm not cursed or anything like this. So I pick and choose when I want to engage. And if it gets too much, I walk away. Break the state of behavior. Get yourself back on this earthbound level. Compose yourself. Go out for a drink, smoke, have in my case, hot chocolate, whatever it is. Get your nerves back on that earthbound level. Put your big girl pants on and then go again. It's, for me, I like I've said many, many times, and I hope you get this from me, guys, is that I keep it simple, stupid, because then I don't have to explain it. Everything is a simple process. If you're getting into the realms of overcomplicating it, and I don't want to do, then don't do it. It is as simple as that. So there is lots of, like we've spoken about, protective stances and things like that when you're working with the energy, but don't ever let them rule you. Don't ever let them rule roughshod over you, whoever that is. Because remember just who you are, because we're living the earthbound life. With all due respect to any spirit that's coming in, they don't have a time frame to live around. They don't have any responsibilities. They can come in as they like. So sometimes, like the naughty toddler that wants to sleep with the parents all of the time, they need some boundaries putting in and some discipline applying back that way. And because spirit non-judgmental, you will never have an issue with it. And that's just my 4 penneth worth.
Yeah. You know, for me, you know, those negative influences, those negative spirits that come through, at this point in my spiritual journey, my terrestrial spiritual journey, I just don't, I have no business with them. My pure guides, the pure spirits that come through and you know, have congress with me, those are the ones that I allow in. I just don't even entertain the dark stuff. You know, every now and then, you know, you get bad news that somebody needs to be delivered. But the whole business, like people that have, you know, demonic possession and things like that, I think that there's a certain mindset, speaking of like manifestation and making things happen magically in your life, you know, if you have a baseline expectation, you will let that in. So, you know, if somebody is, you know, like, don't get me wrong, like I love a horror movie like everybody else, but if you're watching horror movies all day long and you're entertaining the idea of darkness coming into your life and having a profound or managerial effect on it, then you're going to allow that kind of vibe into your life. If you have the expectation that I am only going to allow good things in my life, I'm only going to allow things that allow me to grow and prosper spiritually, then that is what will come to you. It's that law of magnetics. We're really just bringing in the stuff that's going to nurture and help and heal and grow with us, rather than something that would be very limiting or disruptive in our life. That's just my opinion. But it does take some work. You do have to do your meditations. You do have to bring light into your house. I mean, I burn incense every single day. I try and sound cleanse at least 3 times a week. We have a couple of sound bowls here, and I try to sound cleanse the house at least a couple times a week. Duke did not like the sound bowl. I had to do a little training with him on that. But an easy thing to keep your vibrations high. This is super easy, and it's not even something you have to do. Wind chimes. Have some wind chimes outside your house. Have some wind chimes in the house. Little sound bowls, you can get those. You can get the brass ones very inexpensively off Amazon. But we have a big gong outside the house that's a wind chime, and we have a little tinkly wind chime as well. The gong I had bought for Greg before we were married and before we moved in together. It was supposed to be a doorbell. And when it arrived, it was not a doorbell. It was a wind chime. And I called up the company, and they said, "Oh, you bought the wind chime. We corrected that on the website." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." They were like, "Do you want a refund?" I was like, "No, I'll keep it." But it's really great on windy days. When I'm out in the yard, I'll sound that thing off. And it does make a difference. It does raise the cover charge to get into my world and get into my life. So, I only want good things that are going to help and heal us here. And I really work hard to make sure that vibration level stays high. And we don't, and to be sure, like I've seen at my old condo, I did see a shadow person in front of the bathroom. I have no idea who that was, but I was like, beat it, you're not hanging out here. My kids were little, and I didn't have any pets or anything that could identify it. Pets will do that. And I was like, oh, you got to beat it. Like, I just ran through, the juggernaut to get here. I was like, you're not going to come here and wreck my condo. This is our peaceful time. So be gone. And that was it. That was totally it. Every now and then you get something weird. I had somebody huff in my ear one night when I was sleeping, and I was like, oh, I'm sleeping. I'm not working right now. Please, if you have a message, save it for the morning when I have coffee. I think keeping your expectation of only positive things coming to influence you, or it's really important. I think we really do need to have that kind of a mindset on a daily, as a daily thing. Also, compounding that at the end of the day by writing down or noting all of your wins for the day, all the good things that happened. For Yuki, Yuki let us know it is Yuki in the comments. For Yuki, be glad and grateful that you do have a gift, that the conduit is open, that you can get some of that information, because there are people that struggle to really get that. As far as, and I did see your comment before that you did set hours and it didn't work. Write them down on your calendar, on your phone, calendar. Hey, I'm open for information. Or assign an hour in the morning to that until you get more and more control over it. And then that way, you can start to make that contract with the other side and say, hey, I'm only going to entertain, I'm new at this, I'm getting used to it. I'm only going to entertain good stuff that comes through. And I think that that's really a fair arrangement to have with the other side. I think that we're kind of working with them at this point. Um, Yuki had a Civil War soldier in her closet for a while. So, and you know what? That's okay. My aunt, and I've referenced her before. She's a very devout Catholic, but she, was into some supernatural stuff, and she's kind of gone the other way now. But she had some kind of a captain. No, it wasn't the ghost of Mrs. Muir, but some kind of captain. He was in I think a white uniform. She said, but she had a torso that was, walking through her house, and it scared her skinny. But sometimes we have that. My parents, as much as my mom doesn't want to admit it, their house is built was built in 1860. And there's lots of people that are still there. It's a great house, like, why wouldn't they be? My grandmother passed away there. My grandmother's probably there. So I mean, she visits my kitchen, but at my parents' house, we never really had any negative experiences. There were some missing jewelry, makeup, hair supplies, those kinds of things. So I'm pretty confident there's a female in that house. And my grandmother did see, before she passed away, a woman walking up some back steps in the middle of the night. And it looked so real that she went down to the back door and waited. She thought it was the lady who cleaned our house, Martha. And she went down and stood there at the door. And while she was standing there, realizing no one was showing up, she was like, maybe that person was floating a little bit. So, I think, there's lots of stuff that's going on energetically in our world. There's lots of, give and take that goes back and forth. We just have to kind of let them know, like, hey, I'm a newbie, I need you to be a little bit more gentle. Just have, some other people, some nice people come through. There's some psychics and some intuitives that are really good at dealing with those negative energies, and really, kind of the flaming sword kind of fighting. What falls into that bucket is your exorcist, your priest, those kinds of people. I'm not one of those. That is not one of my gifts. My gift is not to go to battle with darkness. My gift is to help people find their yellow brick road, their light. As Monty Python, always look on the bright side of life. Now, I'm not toxically positive. No one that knows me professionally or personally would ever say that I'm toxically positive. I mean, my one friend Kay says to me all the time, she's like, but you're so nice. I'm like, I'm really not that nice. But I think being positive and magnetizing those positive experiences to us are very, very important. And Yuki is commenting now that her gifts seem to be helping pass them over. So, that could be your gift. But you don't have to give that out to everybody. You don't have to just, put it out on the street and just hand it out to everybody. You can be selective with who you extend that gift to, because that can be very, very exhausting. If you are helping people pass over, that can really deplete you, and it's a hard energy to replace. So just be mindful of that. It really is to be that I hate to say escort, but to be an energetic escort like that, it can be really taxing. So I would make sure that I did some shielding and just didn't have everybody, because everyone's on some path who's kind of rolling up to the final curtain. So any given day. You know, heaven forbid there's going to be like a cataclysm. Yuki, you're going to have a bunch of people, you know, coming to you. If we have like another Younger Dryas event, oh boy, you're going to have, you know, millions of people going, help. So, you know, I guess all of us will be doing that at the same time. But so yeah, that, and I see Prima has enjoyed this hour. Yuki saying, you're nice, I am nice. Oh, I don't know about that. So here's interesting. Hi, Grumpy Sapper. Good morning, dear. So there was a ghost of a guy who unalived himself in the barracks in Kent. He didn't want to go to WW1, so he hung himself in the corridor. Yeah, so you know, that I'm going to leave that up. That actually poses a very interesting a very interesting energetic exchange. So a lot of people that opt to do that, there's this moment where they, and we know this from people who are jumpers. There's a moment where they go, I have regret. And you know, those jumpers that do survive say that, you know, there's a moment where they go, oh my God, I completely regret that. I know that I have had one lifetime where I was a jumper, and I intimately understand that moment of regret. I you know, I definitely have felt it. It's a horrible, horrible feeling where you're like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done this. And I think if you've ever had that moment of energetic serendipity, then you can understand why that energy would stay here, because now it's almost like an electric shock, and they really are now kind of in a panicked energetic state. So they're kind of like a whirling dervish of energy here on the earth plane, not on the other side. So it you can understand how they get stuck. It's almost like they're literally circling a drain, some kind of drain, but it's going up. So Rick, your comments on, do you have comments on that?
Not really, because it's not in my range, if that makes sense. I mean, I see, like Grumpy, there was a place, it's a good way from us actually, that they took buildings down brick by brick and then put them in a whole village in a place called Beamish in England. And there you've got like yesteryear and representations of shops and things how they were, but they are literal buildings taken from a certain place and put there brick by brick. So I was always fascinated about what it might bring. So we went up. I was fortunate enough to go up there one day, and I walked into this. I think it was a Victorian house that it was laid out. They took it from somewhere, restored it, and I went in there, and they've got rails around it. But it was very tiny, so you could only get about 3 or 4 people in there, and the exhibit was behind these rails. And I looked in through the door to see whether I could get in, because I can't deal energetically with crowds these days, that people, when they're hemmed into me, because of the sort of pickup on everybody's energy. So I looked in this room, and there was somebody stood there. So I thought I'll give them time to sort themselves out. And I was stood with my foot up the wall, just leaning outside the door. Anyway, after a while, I'm like, oh, they must have gone by now. So I put my head in the door, because it was literally a matter of feet. Walked it, there's nobody there. And they hadn't come past me, because they couldn't possibly come past me because of where I was actually stood. And so I get that quite a lot, actually. This was one of the big prods for me to start working spiritually as well, was that it's only happened on rare occasions, but I see it like prods. When you see the spirit in literal form, and I think it's great. I think it's a real privilege, because not everybody gets to experience that. But in regards to the energy there being stuck in that vortex, that's a brilliant way of describing it, because that is how I see it. I wouldn't have been able to find the words on it, but it's kind of like that. There's a scene on the opening credits of the X-Files where there's a face that comes up and it's stretched like that, and then it disappears off. If you ever seen the X-Files on the opening credits, and with that is how I see some people's energies, that they're sort of, the face is stretched, but the way it's just been described to me, and I've not heard this sort of language for years, is betwixt and between, that it's stuck between two levels. And so the idea of the vortex really, really sits with me. I like that it's going there. It's just that never-ending cycle, though, isn't it? That unless there's a conduit there to say, right, you've done your time, because it's a lower vibrational frequency that will be keeping them on this earth plane or not going on, because touching on reincarnation there, it's that sort of ascendancy process that I don't believe in heaven and hell personally. I believe that you're in a waiting room type of thing, and it's evolution or going back and doing the lesson again. So my strange thought pattern as it is, I'm wondering if hell is where we are now, where we're learning our lessons. I don't know, but
it may well be. I kind of agree with that. I mean, certainly is becoming that. Did you ever see the movie Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks? And all right, so I'm giving you homework. You have to watch it. It's a comedy. It's a romantic comedy. It's Meryl Streep and Albert Brooks, and Rip Torn is in it as well. I love Rip Torn. I loved Rip Torn. He passed away sadly. But Albert Brooks is like a LA kind of dude, and I think he works in the industry. I think he's like a writer or something, and he dies in a stupid car accident. He's looking for a CD in his new car and crashes into a bus and dies. And Meryl Streep, she lived a very good life, and she tripped over a lounge chair at someone's house and hit her head and fell in the pool and drowned. And it's this it's not purgatory. He says it's not purgatory. Nana Julian loves that movie. It's so good. It's like a resort town almost. And they have to review several days of their life with a team and see if they go on or they have to repeat it. And so Albert Brooks has to review 9 days, and that's like a lot of days. So every time someone says, "How many days are you looking at?" He goes, 9 days. They're like, "Ooh, 9 days." He goes to the sushi restaurant at one point, and they're like, 9 days, come by. They're all drinking sake. Meryl Streep only has to look at like 3 days. And I think, it's called Defending Your Life. So I'll put it in the comments for everybody. It is, if you like Albert Brooks, he's fantastic in it. Nemo's dad, Marlin, Defending Your Life. I can't spell life. But I hope that that's what it's like. I hope we're in a city. One of the cool things is there's great restaurants. They can eat as much food as they want and they won't gain weight. So they could just like pig out the whole time. And they have like a past life pavilion. It's really cute. But I really hope that it's like that. I really hope it's like, very relevant to what we have here. And, you can sit down, you can have your conversation, you can have a cup of coffee, you can eat some pies, and it just kind of come to terms with what you didn't do or what you did do in this lifetime, in the last lifetime, figure out where you're going to go. So, I would like for it to be like that, but I can see, it's very interesting with some of the experiences that we had here with Greg's friend that passed away. In the days after, he was very, very much present here and very demonstrative and doing a lot of stuff. But it has gotten less and less. It's been a number of years now, and it's gotten less and less. And he still taps on the top of our mason jars, both upstairs and downstairs, but it's gotten a lot less frequent. So I think that, he's getting to the point where he is going to pass on to the next lifetime, and maybe won't visit quite so much. Maybe a portion of him goes on to the next. I'm sorry, poor Duke. Duke had a spirit. Oh my God. I'm sorry. It's so unprofessional. Good boy. He's sleeping.
We've had a
So
passing.
yeah, exactly. So he's passing some negative spirits. But I think a portion of the entity that we knew, the energetic entity that we knew, kind of comes back and forth. I think they can drop in every now and then, but I think the lion's share of their energy has to go into that next lifetime that they're moving into. TD just got here. Hi, TD. Hi, TD. So, yeah, I think wow, we went really far afield on this. Grumpy did a regression a few years ago, and he went to the house he supposedly lived in, and he saw, yeah, like I think we bring that energy and some of those memories with us. And that can be like good and bad stuff. Like we can bring with us like musical talent. Some people will bring their musical talent with them, and they'll just be a naturally gifted musician. Some people will bring art talent with them. Some people will bring I don't know, any of those things with them into the next lifetime. I think that's, very curious. I think past life regression is a great tool for finding some of that stuff. We've gotten so far away from our transition energy.
Well, have we though? Because we've gone through the energies that we're experiencing. We've gone off what the clients, the audience wanted, and we've gone through I think neat segues of endings of things, how we manage the endings of things. And I think a nice wrap up would be about the rebirth, and I think we've covered that as well to a certain extent of maybe some of the things that bug you and irk you in the spiritual way, some of the things that hold you back, and we've sort of cauterized them a little bit. So if we've done that and we've brought in the death card, which is where we started out with all of that, then that's maybe the ideal spot to say, well, this is where the rebirth can come in. And I've always told this story many, many times before when somebody said to me, you're looking a little bit frazzled. Would you like to know what your future entails? And I said, yes, of course I would. And he said, well, your future can be anything that you want it to be. And I thought, yeah, there's a lot of times where I've gone out there and spent money on these various wonderful people that have filled me full of cotton wool and candy floss and not told me the truth, but gave me better feelings. Ultimately, the rebirth that we're all looking for has got to be down to that point where what you don't want is outweighed by what you do want. So it's tipping that balance in that favor of going, this is me done. This is my death moment. What do I want on my pathway going forward that enables that space then for the rebirth to happen? So I don't think that you've gone off that far as you realize. I think it's in an abstract way, it's tied in really, really well, and it's in keeping with what we both needed to talk about.
Yeah. I think today was fab. Yuki thinks that today was fab. My touch screen's not cooperating. So it's a weird finger. But no, I think that this was fab too. And I think it's important to understand that, all endings are not bad. There's always an excitement on the other end of it. I don't know if this is common practice in England, but when kids graduate high school, it's a lot of people will give them the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, because it talks about, it's Dr. Seuss, it's a little kid's book, but it's, oh, you're going to go on and do great things, and you shouldn't be sad about the things that you leave behind, keep the memories, those kinds of things. I always find change a little bit exciting. And I find it it's like the Fool card. We talked about the Death card, but talking about the Fool card is going on an adventure. He's Bilbo Baggins, and he's excited, and he's running toward that future. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but he is prepared to respond to any eventuality. And I think that is something that, works very nicely with the Death card. We have to remember how we started out our journey, open, brand new baby, full of possibility, full of experiences, not full of negativity, not scarred, not damaged, not banged up. We're going into that future with a positive outlook. And if we keep that positive outlook, if we program ourselves to look at the positive, to not entertain negative spirits, not entertain the negative connotation of death and change, then we can be excited about that future, and we can bring a positive foundation to that future. I feel like I'm waffling. Am I waffling? Is this waffling? No, I'm not waffling. Okay.
Very neat, very neat segue, I think, to tying it up. I'm sat here nodding because I totally agree. And I think it's key to our energies to have that rebirth. And I'm just going to echo. I'm almost repeating it. That thing with the second half of the Death card is all about transformation, or the power of potential transformation, and to then revert back to the start. Because even when we've done the full journey of the tarot, and we've got to the world, and we've done the celebration, and we've stood in our own light and power, whether it's been a good or a bad journey, the next one starts again. And how do you start out? Do you start out full of hope and enthusiasm and open-hearted so that it allows you to make that transformation? Or do you wallow in and get scarred by the darkness and things that, inevitably happen in life? We all always have to experience a balance, because that's part of the learning journey. So no, you're not waffling. I think it's a lovely tie up there. And it's where we started out, and we've done the roundabout journey maybe, but it's where we needed to end up. And I think it's a natural point to just pull that to a close, personally, unless anybody's got anything to add there. I think that was amazing, Anna. I think I'm proud to have been part of that.
Well, I am always proud to be a part of this, Rick. I think what you do is great. And I want to thank Yuki for donating to the channel. Thanks so much, Rick. I will split that with you, since this is our gig. But I think every Monday we have a chance to, every Sunday night we have a chance to visit that Death card, and every Monday morning we get to wake up and be the Fool. I think that's a good thing. I mean, I usually do like a dial-up Monday, and like try and get as much done as possible and manifest as much as possible. And I think today I am going to take this, and I am going to do meditation and kind of implement this into my practice for today. I have, I don't have Angus. He's on spring break. He's down with his dad. I don't have to fetch him until tomorrow. Ella doesn't have to go to school until tomorrow. Greg is off today taking a nap. And I think I'm just going to kind of soak up the, Rick deserves his own. There you go. I'll send that over to you, Rick. I think it is, oh my gosh. And there's Prima. Wow. Everybody, you guys are kicking off the week great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah. And so next week we're going to talk about manifesting abundance. So I think, we did just kind of an intermission, if you will, just because of there were some things that were going on that Rick and I talked about. But next week, we're going to talk about manifesting abundance. And abundance, it doesn't have to mean money. This isn't a money thing. This is having more in your life. And so I absolutely will, Prima. I will split that with Rick. No worries at all. So when we talk about manifesting abundance, it's more please. So if the universe throws me a bunch of great clients, if I see a bunch of great clients in a week, I will say to the universe, wow, that was really awesome. More please, more clients like that. I know, Rick, like you really like working with people on their spiritual ascension, their spiritual development. I think for you get that one client that juicy client who's really just ripe and ready to develop those steps toward ascension. Having that moment where you go, more please. I like working with people on the minor arcana of their life, the little things that they're working on, getting them through their day, getting them through their experience, every single, their human experience, their terrestrial experience. So when I get someone who says, oh, I'm, really having trouble struggling with my kids, I'm like, oh yes, more please. I think I want everybody to prep for next week, thinking about abundance in terms of the things that we want in our life. Sometimes it'll be more dogs or cats. Sometimes it'll be more music. Sometimes it'll be more time outside, more abundance in that. So not thinking of just money. We can talk about, magnetizing money to us. But I think, the idea of abundance really is a holistic concept that we're going to talk about next week. So
lovely, neat spot. So thank you very much for indulging me as usual while I tell my stories and my tales. And I have not got anything really planned because my wife's off for a fortnight. She works at a local school as a teaching assistant. So she's off for 2 weeks for the Easter break. So when she gets back in, it'll be kettle on and copious amounts of chocolate. And I won't be entertaining anything other than the TV for today, as far as I'm concerned, with a little bit of dog walking thrown in, possibly.
She gets 2 weeks for spring break?
Yep.
Wow, we only get a week here. You guys haven't made over there. They really, Europeans and Britons really have it done right. My Angus's uncle in Scotland, they get like a month off. He's retired now. He just recently retired, but they would get like a month off, and they would come over to the US for the month of October. I still marvel at the siesta time in Spain. Like, I think that's such a great idea. That is such a great idea. Who doesn't want to nap during the day? I'm a terrible napper, but I could train for that. I could train to nap during the day. So with that, everybody, we will see you next week, same time, same station. And I failed to set up our live at the end of our meeting. So when we sign off, Rick, I'm going to set up next week's and have it in the can. So you guys can hit the notification so you get it. But it'll be 6:15 approximately New York time. And you have your time change next weekend.
No,
correct?
This weekend. So it'll be around 11:15 here.
Okay. So it's still morning. Still, we'll all still be having our cup of tea or cup of coffee. So I'm going to have another cup of coffee after we get done because my first one didn't take. I'm still a little sleepy. So all right, everybody. Well, listen, go vibe high for the week. And Rick and I will see you all on our channel. So please like, share, and subscribe. Rick, if anyone would like to get a reading with you, how do they contact you?
Rick J. Paul, sorry, I get this right. Medium Rick 007 @gmail.com.
And you guys can reach me at FortuneCookiesTarot@gmail.com. You can also click on the link in the description. There's a scheduler in there. And you can go to my website, either FortuneCookiesTarot.com or SloppyShuffleTarot.com. So I got two now. So working on the Sloppy Shuffle one. It's going to be a little bit cooler than the Fortune Cookie one. So with that, everybody, we'll see you all next week. Have a great day.